and the things that never make it into the public record because of them. Breonna McLeod is one of the many lawyers who describe the prevalence of missing money as an open secret in the Louisville justice system.
These are clients that I know and I can vouch for them. The people that I'm saying that $80,000 is gone, I know it was. And that's happened more than once.
How many times would you say there's been a discrepancy in a case that you've worked on?
More than my hands and toes. It happens more often than it ever should.
So you're representing someone, they tell you that there's a discrepancy, small, enormous, $80,000. What do you do?
They don't like that the money's gone. But if in their mind it reflects a more favorable disposition, then they don't care. They can sweeten it down the line, get it dismissed or get it something where it's not gonna be on my record. And, everyone's walks away.
And the money just...
The money is, it was usually chalked up as the cost of doing business.
But that money, just to be clear, that's not money that's going to the police department, to the district attorney's office.
It's not reported in the judicial system, and it's not reported in the Louisville Metro's police ledgers as well. So that money is gone.
Have you worked any cases that have involved discrepancies in the amount of drugs reported?
I've had drugs not reported at all. And the thing is about money, most people know how much money they have. When they have dope, they know exactly how much it is.
I mean, where's that going?
Well, it probably goes the way of the money. And usually my clients are ecstatic when that's gone.
Multiple people have told us that officers seize drugs for their own purposes, including Guido's former confidential informant. He also said he'd been asked to plant drugs.
There were a few times, and then one time they wanted me to plant drugs to help them with a case. They were going to pay me to do it.
How much were they going to pay you?
They said 10 grand. I don't know where the money was going to come at. At first I was going to do it, but then I thought about it and I backed out at the end of it.
Others have alleged that officers planted drugs on them, including one woman who testified to it in a civil case against Brian Bailey. Another woman told LMPD investigators that Bailey had given her heroin to use. When police interactions happen in the dark, officers have near total control over the narrative.
How much power do these detectives have in dictating the terms of a plea deal or the outcome of some of these cases?
They're very influential. I mean, they can change the plea. Everyone used to say, it's good to know the prosecutor, it's best to know the judge. In all reality, the most powerful person out there is the officer. He can ignore a crime, he can charge you with something. There's nothing more powerful than the discretion of a police officer out there. I mean, that's no doubt. And it's a real danger when a cop knows that power, when they understand that.
Hey, this is Hankerson 658. What is your name?
In May of 2014, Mike Jackson was at a gas station in Louisville, and he was stopped by Detective Brett Hankerson.
All of a sudden, this guy jumps out of the truck. He showed me that he was a police officer. He said, I'm not arresting you or nothing like that. I'm just detaining you. I said, detaining me for what? He said, I'm just detaining you. I said, for what?
You're just being detained right now for investigation, okay?
Hankerson suspected Jackson had just sold drugs to a woman in the back of a cab. Jackson insisted there was no drug deal.
He said, I'm just detaining you. You don't mind if I search your vehicle? I said, yeah, go ahead. It doesn't matter if I search my vehicle for what? And he never ever said what he was detaining me for.
In the car, they found a tiny bit of weed and a lot of money.
I'm thinking to myself, this is fishy. And he just stood there and stared at the money for a minute and looked at me, and he just kept looking. And I could tell he was formulating an idea of how he's going to get some of it.
So where did all this, how much money do you think we got here?
Probably about $20,000.
What do you carry that money around your rental car in the trunk for?
And I was planning on Monday, to take it to the bank. But that's a lot of saving. I'm talking about probably 8 or 9 months of saving.
I told him, I said, I'm a barber. I said, this is money I've been saving for a while.
I'm not accusing you of smoking nothing.
I don't sell drugs.
I'm accusing you of possessing it.
I don't sell drugs. On Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, I don't sell no drugs.
I was black with some money. and I fit the profile. I qualified, I guess, as being a drug dealer.
Hankerson seized all of the cash and ended up charging Jackson for trafficking marijuana. Jackson was already confused by the charge. And then he learned Hankerson had only reported seizing about $14,000.
I went down to internal affairs and I told them, this man put all these fake charges on me. I didn't do anything. He stole money from me.
It's your statement that you had approximately $24,000. And I will tell you that the amount entered was $14,010.
It's not correct. They took some money out of their money.
It quickly became clear that it was virtually impossible to prove how much money Jackson actually had. So it was his word against the word of a bunch of officers who wasted no time attacking Jackson's credibility.
I guess the only thing is obviously this guy's credibility, which, I think everybody at this table knows is in question.
I mean, it's just all a matter of, of him trying to get out of the situation rather than, face the charges.
But there were several reasons to question Hankerson's account, including a moment captured in one of the recordings documenting the arrest that Hankerson provided to investigators. Hankerson had just been reprimanded by his sergeant. He was assigned to a specific detail that day and wasn't supposed to be making arrests at all. While complaining to his partner about the interaction, he can be heard talking about seizing $25,000, far more than Hankerson handed into the property room and in line with what Jackson says he had.
I said, Sarge, I'm trying to do my job and you're making it really difficult right now. Are you guys busy? He said, no, we haven't had any. So, yeah, well, it's either that or get $25,000. I didn't know, or 3 guns. I don't know which the mayor, the chief, and the community would want us to do.
The recordings also suggest that Hankerson was fishing for reasons to charge Jackson with trafficking marijuana, despite evidence to the contrary. Detectives accused him of selling weed to a woman, but didn't find any on her. And they only recovered a tiny amount from his car, which even Hankerson can be heard acknowledging.
It was a nickel, dime sack of weed. That's all it was.
I agree. What you're saying, I'm agreeing with.
The only witness, the cab driver, also independently corroborated Jackson's entire story.
If he's over at the door, what kind of transaction took place between them two?
Nothing. They ain't do. I swear to God, I'd take a lie detector.
Just talking or what?
Yeah, they were just talking. He was trying to help the girl. He said, baby, I help you out. I understand. She was telling me she got evicted, ain't got nowhere to go.
But Hankerson still sent 2 officers to Jackson's place, where they claim to have found more weed.
On the inventory form that's filled out, it says 10 grams of weed.
What?
In total, which I think...
I've never seen that. No.
Jackson says he never gave them permission to search his home, and no record of anyone giving consent exists. Even if police did find 10 grams of weed during a legal search, that amount still isn't nearly enough to suggest he was trafficking. In the weeks after his arrest, Jackson says other officers started harassing him, stopping and searching his car for no reason.
When Hankerson pulled me over at Thornton's, all this stuff started happening right after. I mean, I've never been pulled over like that in my life. There was always unmarked cars, a Viper unit. They was watching me, trying to solidify the case for me as being a drug dealer, so if they catch me doing something, they could keep all the money.
And Hankerson's influence seems to have continued behind the scenes in the courtroom. When the prosecutor was given the option to try Jackson's case as a misdemeanor or pursue a felony instead, he appeared to go call Hankerson.
You want to take a few minutes and talk to your officer?
Let me do that.
And then went with the more serious charge, even though it meant dropping the case and starting all over again in a higher court.
I'm showing the county is moving to dismiss. The county is planning on taking a direct on these.
My client.
Absolutely, come on up. This is Michael Jackson.
Mr. Jackson is quite upset. He believes that these charges are not fundamentally sound in any regard, that the police had no reason to encounter him.
The Commonwealth Attorney's Office told us that it isn't uncommon to take a direct indictment in circuit court as they did in Jackson's case. They denied any knowledge of police officers having undue influence in courtroom decisions. But a source with direct knowledge told us that Hankeson was known for meddling with criminal cases and had a reputation for retaliating against people he'd arrested.
I'm pretty adamant about not dismissing my cases or amending them down to misdemeanors when they're decent.
The following year, as part of a separate internal investigation into Hankeson, he told investigators he tried to personally get a woman's probation revoked.
I'm the one who called Floyd County Commonwealth Attorney's Office myself. I took it upon myself to call them, talk to the prosecutor. I sent him a copy of the citation. I sent him a copy of the lab results. I've tried to get it revoked.
Jackson's second case went on for months, but was eventually dropped as well, for lack of evidence.
After your case is dismissed, what happens? Do you get your stuff back?
Except $10,180. They returned to me $14,010. But it was still $10,180 short.
PIU closed Jackson's case about the missing money because it found there was not enough evidence to prove a crime. But the department never opened a follow-up investigation into any potential policy violations by officers.
When there is a discrepancy like this, what recourse does someone have to get that money back? Or to even just make it known that the money disappeared?
I don't think there is a recourse. Of course I'm gonna get a no. You know, you're a fucking dope dealer. That money wasn't there. Go fuck yourself.
Get on the ground, now!
What it is, it's a burglary first. When the officers take the money from people, they're armed and they go in their house. I mean, I've thought about that a long time ago, that it's actually a home invasion. And it's Louisville's biggest gang. I mean, there's no gang in Louisville bigger than the Louisville Metro Police Department. Short.
Most of these cases never got much attention. But even when the public is watching, LMPD has still failed to fully investigate suspicious behavior by its officers. The most high profile of all of these narcotics raids was the one that ended in Breonna Taylor's death. The public narrative was that no drugs or money were found at her apartment. But that's not what Detective Guido's informant says he was told the following day.
When did you become aware of that raid?
The day after is when I became aware of it. I didn't watch the news or anything. I was getting paid for a buy. I'm sitting in their car, I'm in the back seat. Guido was in the passenger seat, and then I'm asking what we're gonna be doing next to get, so I can make more money. And they said things are gonna be on the slow down for a while now after what happened with the Breonna Taylor stuff.
Guido wasn't at Taylor's apartment on the night of the raid, but several members of his small narcotics unit were, including Brett Hankeson, who fired 10 shots that night.
Who is talking during this? Who's telling you stuff?
Guido's the one that's talking the whole time. He goes in to tell me that they couldn't really search the house too much, but they did search the bedroom, and under the mattress they found $15,000 in cash.
Did you ask them what happened to the $15,000?
No, we didn't, because I didn't know if they turned it in or not.
A source close to Taylor confirmed that it was common for her to hold large amounts of cash at the apartment. And this isn't the first time we've heard about the potential presence of money. On a phone call made from jail about 12 hours after the raid, Taylor's ex, Jamarcus Glover, is recorded saying that Taylor had $14,000 of his money.
Alright, look, tell your cuz she, I don't know how I'm gonna make nothing shape up, but Bree had goddamn like 13. She had 8 I gave the other day, and she picked up another 6.
This recording was specifically cited by LMPD detectives in an internal report compiled months after the raid. Even though LMPD acknowledged there might have been money on the scene, no effort was ever made to find out what happened to it. In the hours after the raid, several members of Guido's unit either lied or withheld information about their whereabouts. Luke Fawn, who was the head of the unit and took over the crime scene after SWAT cleared the apartment, told investigators 2 very different stories about when he left the scene.
How long did you stay on scene after, SWAT was done, and then?
About 30 minutes, but I had to head back down to the hospital with Madeline.
How long were you there on Springfield?
several hours. Matter of fact, I was there till until PIU got there. So I would assume 3 hours they got there. And then once they got there, I was went down to the hospital to see Madeline.
Cole Gibson, Guido's partner at the time, told investigators that he went home after leaving the scene.
So after you left around 4-ish, 3 or 4, did you go home or go back station or?
I went home.
But keycard data obtained by Vice News shows that he actually went to the office. Hankison, who was seen walking in and out of the crime scene, told investigators that he went directly to the hospital after leaving the scene. But cell phone records obtained by Vice News and analyzed by a telecommunications expert suggest he took an unusual detour. After initially heading northeast along the road to the hospital, his phone pinged a tower corresponding to a location well south of the route. The trip took him approximately 30 minutes, almost twice as long as it should have. Another officer noted a similar delay on his way from the hospital to PIU.
After I spoke to Detective Hankinson, I left U of L and went to our public integrity unit.
Was Detective Hankinson there by that time?
No.
Do you know approximately how much later it was that he arrived?
It was after me. I'm not sure the time frame, but I do know it wasn't the time it would take you to get from U of L. There was a delay.
Hankison arrived at PIU sometime before 3:42 a.m., when department records show he handed in his weapon.
Investigators never tried to find out where Hankison might have gone other than the hospital. The Attorney General's office, as part of its own investigation, did question some officers who Hankison spoke with in the aftermath of the raid. But no one seemed to notice one of the oddest interactions contained in Hankison's phone records.
During the period in which he was unaccounted for, Hankison exchanged multiple text messages with Detective Mike Kuzma, who worked for the nearby Shively Police Department. Kuzma played a small role in the investigation leading up to the raid, but in interviews with investigators, claimed to have no further knowledge or involvement. Kuzma's phone records, which were also obtained by Vice News, show that he was in Louisville right around the time the two were exchanging messages, even though he wasn't working and lives half an hour away.
We don't know exactly what transpired, or even what the two were texting about, because no one ever subpoenaed Hankison's texts, and Kuzma was never asked about his contact with Hankison that night. Over the course of 3 investigations, 2 by LMPD and 1 by the state's Attorney General's office, no one ever got answers about whether there was money at the apartment, if it was stolen, and if so, by whom. Given the history of allegations against LMPD for missing money, it raises serious questions about whether the now infamous raid was also part of the pattern we've identified in our reporting.
For the past year, the Department of Justice has been investigating potential civil rights abuses at LMPD, including in how they conduct searches and seizures, and in what happened the night Taylor died.
Have you done any informant work since then?
No. They said, I just want you to know it's not going to be like it used to be. We have to follow protocols, and it's going to be really tough to get these things done.
Detective Guido has been on administrative leave since July of 2020, when LMPD opened an investigation into an incident in which he shot a protester in the face with a pepper ball. We reached out to officers Guido, Kuzma, Fawn, Gibson, and King, and none of them responded. Brian Bailey resigned from the department amid sexual misconduct allegations. His lawyer declined to comment, citing ongoing litigation. Brett Hankison was fired for his involvement in Taylor's death. When asked for comment on his whereabouts the night of Breonna Taylor's death, as well as the allegations relating to Mike Jackson's case, Hankison pointed out that most or all of what we asked about had been investigated by LMPD and was closed without findings of wrongdoing. LMPD's Criminal Interdiction Unit has since announced a shift away from narcotics work to a new focus on violent crime. Drug raids have decreased dramatically, from at least once a week to once every several months.
We're not doing drugs for the sake of drugs. We're not doing warrants for the sake of warrants.
On LMPD's new podcast, which they claim was launched to bring more transparency to the department, they recently made light of the idea of targeting people over small amounts of drugs.
So these are your guys, for example, they're out finding the dime bags of weed, right? And they're making those good weed arrests, right? And just taking care of the community one dime bag at a time. Is that what your guys are doing? That's what you're telling me?
Couldn't be further from that, no.
But for those who have experienced what happens when the cameras are off, it's going to take a lot more to rebuild trust. And so far, there have been no consequences or even acknowledgement of the damage the department's narcotics unit has already done.
Internal affairs is supposed to be the police over the police to ensure that I get justice, and with no justice. Every time I see the police, even to this day, I'm scared.
You were sober for almost 10 years leading up to
Over 10 years.
Leading up to that day?
Over 10 years. See my smile? When I relapsed, it was because of that. I didn't do anything wrong, and no one believed me. No one believed me. I'm in rehab again. And I have a room there, and I'm in recovery. I'm in their program there, and everything's good now.
What are you thinking about?
God is good, man. You know, I mean, I lived through it. I lived through it.
I'm Michael Learmonth, editor-in-chief of Vice News. Too often, traditional news outlets shy away from the real stories and experiences of those living through global conflicts. Not Vice News. Our reporters are on the ground, fearlessly covering the human stories that shape our world. You and millions of others can continue to read, watch, and listen to Vice News for free. But we hope you'll consider making a one-time or ongoing contribution of any size at vice.com/contribute. Every contribution, no matter how big or small, helps support the journalism Vice News brings to you every day. Thank you.